Titanic, the ship of dreams. Long before the moonlight over the Atlantic rocked its wreckage in silence, long before its name became a whisper of tragedy passed down through generations, there was just an idea, a dream, a vision of something grand, something extraordinary, something they called unsinkable. Titanic wasn't just a ship, she was a floating monument to human ambition, a cathedral made of iron and elegance, a steel promise of a future where humanity could tame the sea itself. And in April 1912 the world believed it. The early 20th century was a time of confidence, bold inventions and rapid industrial growth. Trains thundered across continents, telegraphs clicked out messages from distant cities, and the sky no longer belonged only to the birds. One day it would be ours too. It was the dawn of the modern age, shining with optimism and covered in soot. In this world of steam and dreams, Titanic was built not just as a ship, but as a symbol of power, luxury and progress without consequences. She was meant to be the largest moving object ever created by human hands, a floating palace with oak reading rooms, glittering chandeliers and Turkish baths. She was so huge and so well thought out that many passengers admitted they forgot they were even at sea. The big shipping companies competed like gods brandishing tridents. Cunard, White Star Line, and the others fought not only for the fastest ships, but for the biggest, the most luxurious, the most magnificent. It was a matter of national pride and plain old profit. Ships weren't just transport, they were floating advertisements, status symbols and works of art. In this high-stakes game, White Star Line made its boldest bet, a trio of Olympic-class ships. First came Olympic, then her sister, bigger, more refined, more glamorous than any vessel the world had ever seen, Titanic. Even the name was daring, unrestrained, and immodest, a nod to the mighty titans of Greek myth, being so enormous and unstoppable that even the gods feared them. Designed in Belfast by the shipbuilding firm Harland & Wolff, Titanic was meant to be the crown jewel. Over 882 feet long and 92 feet wide, with 9 decks and a gross tonnage of more than 46,000 tons, she was the largest moving object ever built by human hands. Her massive black hull rose from the sea like a mountain. 4 towering funnels, though only 3 actually worked, cut confidently into the sky, embodying the cocky spirit of the new era. Inside it was a true palace. First-class suites rivaled the best 5-star hotels on land, with reading rooms, cafes, smoking lounges, and staterooms so luxurious they had their own private promenade decks. The grand staircase, with its elegant wrought iron railings and glowing dome, looked more like a royal opera house than a ship. But down below was a completely different world. In third class, immigrant families dreamed not of champagne but of a future. Jobs, land, hope. They traveled not for luxury but for survival. Packed tightly on the lower decks with bunk beds and simple food, they still carried excitement, songs, and tightly clutched tickets to a new life across the ocean. And that ocean, of course, was the Atlantic, and it was never a gentle pond. It was endless, wild, and unpredictable. The North Atlantic in April could be mirror calm or dark and brutal. But nobody worried too much. Titanic was practically unsinkable, they said. The designers themselves didn't boast about it outright. The newspapers grabbed that phrase like hungry seagulls after fish. But the point remained. With her watertight compartments and double bottom, she was built with safety in mind. She was modern, she was strong, and people trusted her. So on April 10, 1912, under the gray skies of Southampton, Titanic set out on her maiden voyage. Flags waved, orchestras played, stewards straightened their ties and polished the teacups. A young nation watched with pride as its greatest ship left the dock and sailed straight into legend. The world leaned in, intrigued and dazzled. No one knew, or could have known, that this magnificent ship, this marvel of human engineering and elegance, would never reach its destination. But that's the part of the story everyone knows. What often gets overlooked is the world she left behind, the world she was born into. Titanic was a product of her era, a time when the gap between rich and poor was bottomless, when safety rules lagged behind ambition, and when luxury was built on the backs of the invisible and the unheard. She sailed not just across the sea but through a moment in human history, a moment of roaring confidence, gilded luxury, and dangerous certainty. Her tragedy wasn't only in the lives lost, but in the shattered illusion. Titanic taught the world that even its brightest creations are vulnerable, that progress without humility leads to hubris, that the sea doesn't care about our titles or tuxedos. Yet in her short, shimmering life, Titanic captured the imagination of an entire generation and still haunts the dreams of those who look back. This story isn't just about a disaster. It's about hope and sorrow, about class and courage, about design and destiny. It's about human nature itself, the drive to build great things, the belief that they'll last forever, and the discovery that even the strongest steel can break in the cold. And so we begin not at the end but at the very beginning. When the rivets were still cooling, when the cabins still smelled of varnish, when the chandeliers still glowed in gaslight, and when the sea had not yet claimed what man had created. Our ship is waiting, and so is her story. Creation. Even before she touched the sea, Titanic existed only in imagination, in sketches, in the smoke-filled boardrooms, in the glow of gas lamps over ambitious plans. Her birth began not with poetry but with business, cold, calculated, riveted to the last bolt business. And yet from the steel ribs of capitalism rose a ship destined to become legend. It all started with rivalry. At the beginning of the 20th century, the fight for dominance on the transatlantic route was fierce. The British Cunard Line had launched two swift ocean greyhounds, Lusitania and Mauretania, fast, elegant, successful. White Star Line, Cunard's fiercest competitor, needed an answer right away. But instead of racing for speed, White Star bet on size, luxury, and sheer grandeur. They would build not one but 3 ships, so big and so magnificent they would capture the hearts of passengers and newspapers alike. At the center of this plan stood J. Bruce Ismay, head of White Star Line, a man who appreciated fine things and grand gestures. He imagined the ships not just as transport, but as experiences, floating worlds where aristocrats and magnates could live in elegance while crossing oceans. He teamed up with Lord William Peary, head of the Belfast shipbuilding company Harland and Wolff. Together they created the concept for the Olympic-class liners. First would come Olympic, then Titanic, and later Britannic. And so in 1908 the plans for Titanic were drawn up, not from dreams but from careful engineering. Her blueprints were a labyrinth of innovation. She would be longer than 2 football fields. Her hull was divided into 16 watertight compartments, a revolutionary safety feature. She could carry more than 2,400 passengers and over 900 crew. On board there would be squash courts, electric elevators, a swimming pool right at sea, and grand staircases that looked heavenly with delicate railings. Construction began on March 31, 1909, at the Harland and Wolff shipyards in Belfast, Ireland. The city hummed with industry. Nearly 15,000 workers labored on Titanic and her brother Olympic side by side. These men, often forgotten behind the glitter of the first-class ballrooms, were welders, riveters, carpenters, engineers. They worked with calloused hands and scorched fingers, climbing scaffolds, swinging hammers, pressing steel. Many were injured, some died. But it was their labor that shaped the legend. The ship's frame slowly rose from the slipway like a leviathan, held by the giant gantry structure built specially for Olympic and Titanic. It towered over the city, forming a new skyline. Boys skipped school just to catch a glimpse. Poets stood in the rain. Construction took over 2 years. Rivets were hammered by hand, thousands of them connecting steel plates thicker than a man's chest. The engines alone were monumental. 2 huge reciprocating steam engines and a central turbine, each fed by 29 boilers and 159 coal furnaces. Down in the depths, stokers worked in unbearable heat, hour after hour shoveling coal so Titanic could move forward. Up above, the interiors bloomed with impossible luxury. Harland and Wolff brought in interior designers, artists, and craftsmen. The first-class saloons echoed the styles of the Palace of Versailles: wood-paneled reading rooms, rose-patterned carpets, stained glass, velvet armchairs, gilded wall sconces. Every suite was its own world, designed so the rich would feel even richer. On May 31, 1911, Titanic was launched. Not with fanfare, just into the water. Over 100,000 people gathered in Belfast to watch. Her hull slid down the slipway in just 62 seconds, guided by gravity and prayers. No bottle of champagne was smashed against her side. White Star preferred restraint. At that point she was an empty shell without engines or interiors, but the crowd was awed. She was already magnificent. Outfitting took another 10 months. Inside they wove wiring, laid pipes, painted and perfected her. During that time her reputation grew. Newspapers printed sketches. High society whispered about the dining rooms and smoking lounges. Tickets began to sell. And in the background stood the silent men who had built her. None of them knew they had just given birth to one of humanity's greatest stories. Among the people behind Titanic's creation, one name stands out: the brilliant and doomed Thomas Andrews. He was the ship's chief designer, meticulous, kind, respected by workers and officers alike. He personally oversaw construction, walking the decks with notes in hand, checking every detail. He knew every rivet, every corridor, every safety system. When Titanic sailed, Andrews went with her not as a passenger, but as her guardian. By early 1912 Titanic was ready. Ismay, bursting with pride, planned the maiden voyage as a real spectacle. Titanic would sail from Southampton to New York via Cherbourg and Queenstown. On board gathered the elite of the elite: business tycoons, aristocrats, artists and immigrants. It was supposed to be a voyage of stories, dreams, secrets and surprises. No one imagined it would end in tragedy. In the very creation of Titanic we see the perfect storm of human traits: ambition, pride, hope, genius and blindness. She was the best we could build, yet she carried all the flaws of the people who made her. The decision to cut lifeboats for the sake of aesthetics. The belief that she was too big to fail. The certainty that man had conquered nature. And yet, when the sea called, all of that would be tested. But that comes later. For now she stands gleaming at the dock. Her propellers shine, her carpets are still spotless, her hull untouched by salt. And her name, Titanic, is whispered like a spell. The dream is ready and so is the sea. Beauty. She didn't just sail, she glided. When Titanic first left the Belfast shipyards, fully fitted and shining like a mythical beast forged from steel, the world held its breath. This was no ordinary ship. This was a palace, a statement, a mirror of society wrapped in rivets and luxury. She measured 882 feet 9 inches long, almost 3 football fields laid end to end, and 92 feet wide at her broadest point. From keel to the tops of the funnels she stood as tall as an 11-story building. With a gross tonnage of over 46,000 tons, she was the largest moving object ever created at the time. When people first saw her at the dock, they described her not as a ship but as something otherworldly, a mechanical leviathan. Let's walk her decks together. Her hull was painted a deep, rich black that stretched endlessly before the eye, while the upper decks gleamed with fresh white paint. A shining gold stripe ran along her side, catching the sun with every gentle roll of the tide. And those 4 magnificent funnels, iconic, tall, noble, rose like cathedral spires against the sky. Only 3 actually worked. The 4th was purely decorative because sometimes things are built just for beauty, and Titanic was truly beautiful. The ship had decks lettered from the highest boat deck down to the hidden world near the keel. Each deck had its purpose and told a different story depending on who you were and how much you could afford. On the boat deck stood the lifeboats, we'll come back to those, the bridge and the quarters for the captain and officers who commanded this giant. Here passengers strolled in the open air with sea breeze in their hair and distant sounds of a string quartet drifting up from below. Below that was the promenade deck, a favorite of first-class passengers for its elegance and fresh air. You could stroll leisurely under gleaming white railings and admire the horizon without mixing too closely with the other half. The interiors were even more breathtaking. Entering through the first-class entrance, you stepped onto the legendary grand staircase. It spiraled down through several decks like a scene from a fairy tale, made of polished oak, crowned with a stained glass dome, and guarded by a carved clock with allegorical figures of honor and glory crowning time. Under that clock, lovers paused, millionaires adjusted their ties, dukes' daughters giggled behind gloved hands. The stairs weren't just a passage, they were a stage. Titanic's first-class suites surpassed the luxury of many hotels on land. There were staterooms with private promenade decks, elegant restaurants with spotless white tablecloths and gleaming silver, a Parisian cafe with wicker furniture and potted palms, plus a squash court, barber shop and Turkish bath. And the first-class dining saloon. It spanned almost the full width of the ship, surrounded by columns and crystal chandeliers, seating over 500 guests in Edwardian splendor. Every evening they served 10-course dinners with delicacies like oysters, foie gras and roasted quail. The menus read like poetry, and passengers dined like emperors on water. Descending to second class, the luxury dimmed a little, but only a little. Second-class passengers on Titanic often compared it favorably to first class on other liners. It was a place for teachers, clergymen, merchants, respectable people who could afford fine china but not quite their own butlers. Then there was third class or steerage, often remembered as cramped and gloomy. In reality, Titanic's third class was considered quite decent by the standards of the time. Cabins held 2 to 6 passengers, had real beds, running water, and shared dining rooms. Most third-class passengers were immigrants full of hope and anxiety. They danced to fiddles below decks, ate hearty meals like stew and bread, and dreamed of New York as the promised land. But the divide between classes was striking. Third class was physically separated by locked gates and crew patrols. First-class passengers had kennels for their dogs, while third-class residents were barred from the upper decks. Even deck chairs depended on your class. Titanic was a floating society built on hierarchy no less than on steel. The richer you were, the more sky you got. Beneath it all lay the ship's mechanical soul. Her engine rooms, boiler rooms and turbine halls, worlds of unbearable heat and constant roar. Titanic had 29 boilers and 162 furnaces tended by a whole army of stokers who worked shirtless in the blazing belly of the beast. Coal was shoveled by the ton hour after hour, keeping up steam and driving the ship smoothly through the sea. Even deeper was the orlop deck, for cargo, mail and refrigerated rooms for perishable goods. Titanic carried millions of letters, crates of champagne, a Renault car and even, some said, an Egyptian mummy. At least that's what the ghost stories claimed. Everything about Titanic, from the ornate balustrades to the polished brass doorknobs, spoke of one mission: to be the best, the biggest, the brightest jewel in White Star Line's crown. And for a few days she was. Before she became a graveyard, she was a palace. Before she broke apart, she brought people together. Those laughing on promenade decks, dancing in the halls, dozing in deck chairs with books in their hands. She was beautiful. And when we now stand in our dreams, walking those empty corridors with ghostly lightness, we still hear the echo of polished shoes on tile, the clink of teacups, the distant lullaby of piano keys. Titanic in all her splendor is gone, but her image, her look, her design, her impossible elegance sail on forever. She was magnificent, yet she could not sail herself. For all her steel grandeur and gaslit corridors, Titanic was nothing without the people who filled her. In April 1912, more than 2,200 souls boarded her. Some in furs and silks, others with all their hopes squeezed into one worn suitcase. The story of the ship is their story, their laughter, their choices, their dreams, their fates. Let's meet them now not as statistics but as the heartbeat of Titanic. The people. The crew. Titanic carried about 900 crew members, recruited from all over Britain and Ireland. Many had worked on her sister Olympic and were experienced sailors, stewards, engineers, cooks, and stokers. Some were proud professionals. Others were desperately seeking work. Almost none could know this voyage would be their last. On the bridge stood Captain Edward John Smith, a respected White Star Line officer often called the Captain of Millionaires because of his popularity with wealthy passengers. With his thick beard and calm, fatherly presence, Smith had spent many voyages at the helm. Titanic was supposed to be his last before retirement, a grand farewell on the greatest ship of all time. But fate, of course, had other plans. Beside him were Chief Officer Henry Wilde, First Officer William Murdoch, Second Officer Charles Lightoller, and Third Officer Herbert Pittman. Names that would later be spoken with respect, controversy, and pain. Murdoch would be remembered for lowering lifeboats and, according to some accounts, for taking his own life. Lightoller would survive and serve in both world wars, forever haunted by the cold Atlantic. Below the officers were sailors, stokers, trimmers, and engineers, the ones who kept the fires burning, the decks clean, and the boats ready. The messengers were actually boys, some were only 14. The Titanic Orchestra, led by Wallace Hartley, was hired not just for entertainment but to create an atmosphere of class and calm. They would become immortal for their final performance. The stewards, the unsung heroes, were the link between the ship's grandeur and her guests. They carried luggage, served meals, polished silverware, and calmed nerves. They knew the ship inside out, every creaky corridor, every secret passage. Many of them went down with her. They boarded Titanic not for legend but for pay, for pride, for routine, and became heroes. First-class passengers. The list of Titanic's first-class passengers reads like a who's who of 1912. Business tycoons, aristocrats, millionaires, celebrities. Their cabins were suites, their meals were banquets. Their presence was part of the spectacle. At the top of the social pyramid stood John Jacob Astor IV, one of the richest men in the world. With his much younger wife Madeline, he was returning from their honeymoon in Egypt. Witty, charming, devoted to his bulldog, he did not survive. She pregnant did. There were Isidore and Ida Strauss, co-owners of New York's Macy's department store. Elderly, wealthy, beloved. When Ida was offered a place in a lifeboat, she refused to leave her husband. We have lived together for many years. Where you go, I go. They were last seen sitting side by side in deck chairs as the ship went down. There was Benjamin Guggenheim, traveling with his mistress and who, according to legend, changed into evening dress as the ship sank, saying, "We've dressed in our best and are prepared to go down like gentlemen." There was Lady Duff Gordon, a fashion designer and scandal magnate, and Margaret "Molly" Brown, who earned the nickname the unsinkable Molly Brown for her fiery courage in lifeboat number 6. These passengers had marble bathtubs, private promenade decks, and personal valets. But when the ship groaned and listed, their wealth became weightless. In the darkness, money meant nothing. Only courage mattered. Second-class passengers. Titanic's second class is the forgotten middle layer. Teachers, clergymen, craftsmen, artists. They traveled with dignity and purpose, often on their way up, modestly dressed but with big dreams. Among them was Lawrence Beasley, a science teacher from London. He survived and later wrote a haunting, insightful account of the disaster. There was Edith Russell, a fashion journalist who brought aboard a musical toy pig that later helped calm frightened children in a lifeboat. Father Thomas Biles, a Catholic priest, twice refused a seat in a boat so he could stay and give absolution to passengers, praying until the end. They might not have had chandeliers, but they had conviction. Third-class passengers, steerage. Third-class passengers were the heart of Titanic. Over 700 of them came aboard carrying nothing but hope and bread in their bundles. Irish farm girls, Swedish carpenters, Syrian traders, barefoot children with wide eyes. They came from England, Ireland, Italy, Poland, Lebanon. Their languages filled the corridors like a lullaby of longing. Some had never seen indoor plumbing. Some had never left their village. For them, Titanic wasn't just a ship, she was salvation. But physically and socially they were at the bottom. Many didn't even know how to reach the boat deck. Gates locked them in, the crew ignored them. When the alarm sounded, they waited for instructions that never came. The survival rate among third-class passengers was tragically low, yet their stories live on. Young Annie Moore traveling with her brothers to a new life in America. The Goodwin family with their 6 children. None survived. Elsie Bowerman, a suffragist, survived and later fought for women's rights in Parliament. So many names, so many lost. Titanic was a floating city, a microcosm of the world divided by class and stitched together by fate. On her decks, fortunes glittered and vanished. Lives were wagered, saved, and sacrificed. From the bridge to the boiler rooms, from the grand saloons to the dark steerage corridors, the people on board breathed life into her. It's not her steel that haunts us. It's their voices, their choices, their unsent love letters, their lullabies swallowed by the sea. They are why we remember. Because of them, Titanic never truly sank. The voyage. The gangway of Titanic creaked as feet stepped into history. On the morning of April 10, 1912, under Southampton's gray sky, 2,240 souls boarded the most talked-about ship on Earth. Luggage was hoisted, trunks thudded. Birds scattered as the giant let out a low, rumbling groan, her voice, her engines, her heart waking up. Now she was alive. The dock buzzed with emotion. First-class passengers arrived in carriages with porters and maids, their trunks marked in gold. Second-class guests gathered with less fanfare but no less joy. Third-class families clung to one another, ushered aboard in groups, eyes wide, hearts pounding. There was no music, no grand send-off, just the chill of sea air and the slow, majestic departure of a ship the world believed untouchable. Titanic's voyage was set from Southampton to New York with stops in Cherbourg, France, and Queenstown, now Cove, on Ireland's Cork Island. It was a well-known Atlantic route, but this time everything felt different. Bigger, bolder. The voyage of a lifetime. At noon, Titanic pulled away from her berth. Her engines pulsed, her funnels exhaled, and slowly, powerfully she moved. She was so enormous that her motion created a suction strong enough to snap the mooring lines of the nearby SS New York, nearly causing a collision before the voyage had truly begun. Tugs rushed to help. Drama was averted, and passengers watched in wonder. It was an odd omen. Few paid much attention. At 6:30 p.m. she reached Cherbourg, where 274 passengers boarded via tenders nomadic and traffic. Titanic was too big to dock. Among them were millionaires and artists in furs and feathers, glowing with pride at being part of history. The next morning, April 11th, Titanic arrived at Queenstown, where the final 120 passengers, mostly Irish emigrants, boarded, clutching dreams and folded paper tickets. They waved goodbye to the shore, to families they would never see again, to lands they were leaving forever. At 1:30 p.m. Titanic turned west and headed into the open Atlantic. The voyage had begun. For the next 4 days Titanic was a floating world. Days melted into gentle routines. The sea was calm, the sky mostly clear. She glided through the water as if in a dream, averaging about 21 knots, roughly 24 miles per hour. Smooth, even proud. In first class, life was elegant like a Parisian hotel. Ladies sipped tea under gilded ceilings, discussing literature and debating the latest fashion trends. Men played cards, smoked cigars in mahogany lounges, and took brisk walks on the promenade deck to justify another helping of filet mignon Lily. The ship hummed with abundance. The dining saloon rang with laughter and the clink of silver. There were balls, orchestras, whispered scandals, and chances for new acquaintances. Every moment felt curated, every breath luxurious. Meanwhile, in second class, passengers enjoyed their own comfort, restrained but refined. They played deck games, read in the library, wrote letters on Titanic stationery, and dined on dishes like baked hake and spring lamb. Dignity and coziness reigned, privacy without pomp. And in third class, far below, energy bubbled over. Families shared food, sang songs, danced to fiddles, and made new friends across language and cultural barriers. Children ran laughing through corridors. Young men smoked on lower decks, imagining new lives in America. There wasn't much elegance, but there was plenty of joy. It was crowded, yes, but there was warmth, humanity, and hope. While Titanic raced westward, the sky stayed calm. The ocean sparkled by day and stretched dark and endless by night. On Sunday, April 14th, passengers woke to an unusually clear day. Services were held. The air was crisp and icy. Some remarked how calm the sea was, unnaturally calm like glass. By then Titanic had received several iceberg warnings from other ships in the area. At 9 a.m. the Coronia warned of ice ahead. That same day the Baltic did the same. Later signals came from the Californian and Mesaba too. Messages reached the bridge, but they didn't seem urgent. The ship was modern, the night calm. Warnings were noted and set aside. Captain Smith adjusted the course slightly, but speed was not reduced. It's important to understand that in 1912, colliding with icebergs was considered rarely fatal. Ships often grazed ice and continued. With her watertight compartments, Titanic was thought almost invulnerable. Besides, she was already running a day behind schedule. Speed was prestige. The final full day, until late afternoon on April 14th, the mood was upbeat. Passengers enjoyed their last complete day at sea. A lifeboat drill had been planned but cancelled. Some thought it unnecessary, others simply didn't want to disturb the guests. Instead, the orchestra played on deck, photographs were taken, kitchens buzzed preparing for the evening's lavish dinner. As the sun set, the temperature dropped sharply. In first class, multi-course banquets clinked with champagne glasses. Lobsters, quail, duck, exquisite jellies, French pastries. In second and third class the food was simpler, cottage pie, roast pork, boiled potatoes, but the mood stayed content. Around 9 p.m. Titanic raced through icy waters under a starry sky. No moon, no wind. The Atlantic was eerily calm. In the wireless room, operators Jack Phillips and Harold Bride were swamped with passenger telegrams. Ice warnings kept coming but got lost in the flow. Up in the crow's nest, lookouts Frederick Fleet and Reginald Lee stared into the blackness, searching for danger. They had no binoculars. The key to the locker had been lost back in Southampton. Down below, everything felt normal, everything felt calm. Passengers drifted off to bed. Some stayed up playing cards. Lovers kissed in deck chairs. Children were tucked in with lullabies. The ship glided onward faster and faster, slicing through the night with quiet arrogance. And then, just before 11:40 p.m., a shape appeared against the stars. Fleet struck the bell 3 times. Iceberg right ahead. Collision and rescue. It happened just before midnight on Sunday, April 14, 1912. The Atlantic was unnaturally quiet. No waves, no wind. Just a glass-smooth surface reflecting millions of stars and the silent, massive shadow of RMS Titanic cutting through the darkness, moving west at over 22 knots. In the crow's nest, Frederick Fleet peered tensely into the gloom. The lookouts had no binoculars. They'd been left locked in a cabinet back in Southampton. The night was clear, but the iceberg lay ahead, invisible in the moonless, inky dark. Then, like a ghost, it appeared, a massive wall of ice, silent, enormous, far too close. Fleet rang the bell 3 sharp times. Iceberg right ahead. The bridge reacted instantly. First Officer Murdoch ordered hard A starboard. Engine room telegraphs rang for full reverse. Down below, engines thundered into reverse. But Titanic was gigantic and physics was merciless. She began to turn but too slowly. At 11:40 p.m. the iceberg grazed along the starboard side. It wasn't a dramatic head-on crash or a shattering blow, it was worse, a long deadly gash. Below the waterline, ice tore through 5 compartments. Titanic was designed to stay afloat with 4 flooded, but not 5. The math was simple, she was doomed. Yet on the decks, calm still reigned. The contact was soft, barely a jolt. Passengers stirred but didn't panic. Some got dressed and went out to look. Others went back to bed. In the mail room, sacks of letters floated in rising water. In the boiler rooms, men worked waist-deep in freezing Atlantic water pouring in. The ship began to list ever so slightly. The bow dipped slowly, almost imperceptibly toward the sea. Thomas Andrews, the chief designer and a passenger, was among the first to understand the inevitable. He moved from compartment to compartment, calculating. By midnight he knew without doubt, the ship would sink in no more than 2 hours. Captain Edward Smith, stunned but composed, ordered the lifeboats uncovered. The crew had never practiced a full evacuation. Many didn't even know how many people each boat could hold. The first distress signal, CQD, was sent. Soon they switched to the new SOS signal, never before used in a real emergency. Titanic's wireless operators Jack Phillips and Harold Bride worked non-stop, sending calls for help to every ship in range. One, the Carpathia, replied. She was 58 nautical miles away and steaming at full speed, but she needed more than 4 hours to reach them. They didn't have 4 hours. Titanic carried 20 lifeboats, enough for roughly half the people on board. That wasn't considered unusual at the time. Regulations were based on tonnage, not passenger numbers. Lifeboats were meant to ferry people to nearby rescue ships, not evacuate everyone. At 12:25 a.m. the first boat, number 7, was lowered. It could hold 65 but left with only 28. People didn't want to leave the unsinkable ship. It seemed safer to stand on the brightly lit deck than sit in a small wooden boat on the Black Sea. Crew were told to follow women and children first, but some interpreted it as women and children only. Many boats left half empty. Confusion and fear colored every order. As minutes passed, the situation grew critical. The bow sank lower. Water poured through open portholes. Some passengers began to panic. Others still refused to believe. Andrews moved through the ship without panic, insisting people put on life jackets and head to the decks. "Ladies, you must take all the warm clothing you can and get up on deck immediately," he said. "You have less than an hour. You cannot choose. You must go now or it will be too late." He did not survive. In the final hour, around 1:30 a.m., Titanic's list became sharp. The stern rose. The music never stopped. Yes, the orchestra stayed. Wallace Hartley and his musicians played tune after tune, soothing the chaos with sound. Boat after boat was lowered, some nearly empty, some overcrowded, some capsizing in the confusion. Third-class passengers, held back by locked gates and language barriers, struggled to reach the upper decks. Many never made it. In the last hour, Murdoch and Lightoller worked frantically to launch every remaining boat. Captain Smith moved silently about the bridge. He gave his final orders, then vanished into legend. Some say he returned to the wheel, others say he jumped into the sea. No one knows for sure. Around 2 a.m. only a few boats remained. Hundreds were still on board. The lights flickered. At 2:18 a.m. the ship groaned. A thunderous crack split the night. Titanic broke in two. The stern rose high against the stars, then began to slip under. Screams tore through the darkness. At 2:20 a.m. the last part of Titanic vanished beneath the waves. Over 1,000 people were left struggling in the water. The temperature was 28 degrees Fahrenheit -2 degrees Celsius. Within minutes most lost consciousness. Within 20, almost all had died from the cold. The lifeboats, only a few dozen yards away, sat in silence. Only one, number 14, under 5th Officer Harold Lowe, returned to search for survivors. They found 4 living. One later died. A haunting silence fell. Just the lapping of waves and stars overhead. At 4 a.m. the lights of Carpathia appeared in the darkness. She picked up 706 survivors. Lifeboats drifted toward her like ghosts. Mothers clutched children, men wept. Faces were pale, shoes lost, nightgowns frozen stiff with cold. Carpathia's captain, Arthur Rostron, performed miracles, doubling watches, freeing cabins, turning his ship into a floating hospital. Survivors climbed aboard like shadows. Titanic was gone. At 8:50 a.m. Carpathia turned and set course for New York. The last lifeboat was hoisted aboard. Behind them lay only debris, suitcases, deck chairs, a revolving cylinder, and the dreams of 1,000 souls. That collision wasn't just steel against ice. It was the sound of shattered confidence, the crack in faith, and the awakening of an entire century. Inquiries and investigation. Titanic disappeared beneath the water on April 15, 1912. And the world woke up in grief, wrapped in disbelief. How could she have sunk? Where were the lifeboats? Who was to blame? The public didn't want poetry, they wanted answers. And within days the world's most luxurious ship had become the planet's most urgent legal case. The American Inquiry. Even before Carpathia reached New York, the United States launched its own investigation. It was led by Senator William Alden Smith of Michigan, a man in a bowler hat who loved publicity and had exactly zero experience in maritime law. What he lacked in nautical knowledge he made up for in volume. His goal was to figure out what the hell had happened. Senate hearings began on April 19, 1912, just 4 days after the ship went down. They took place in the opulent halls of the Waldorf Astoria Hotel and later in Washington. Over 80 days, 82 witnesses were called, including surviving officers and crew. Even J. Bruce Ismay, managing director of White Star Line, the man they called Mr. Unsinkable, was dragged into the spotlight like a guilty wet cat in a cradle. Ismay had survived by boarding one of the last boats. The press tore him apart. Why didn't the man who ran the company go down with the ship? They demanded. To some he was a coward, to others just a man who did what anyone would. But on the witness stand he squirmed under harsh lights and harsher questions, trying to defend decisions that now seemed soaked in failure. The inquiry uncovered several key failures. Too few lifeboats, excessive speed despite multiple ice warnings, no binoculars for the lookouts, no lifeboat drill, chaotic evacuation, and the treatment of third-class passengers, locked gates, delayed warnings. Many third-class passengers barely had a chance. Yet the Senate committee was relatively gentle. Sharp words were spoken, but no one went to prison, no one lost their job. It felt more like a stern scolding than justice. The final report, released May 28, 1912, stated the disaster resulted from excessive speed and ignoring ice warnings. Thanks, Senator. Obvious, but for the public the hearings gave something incredibly important. Faces to the tragedy. The myth of Titanic cracked, and behind it stood imperfect people, avoidable mistakes, and the cost of hubris. The British inquiry. Not wanting to be outdone by the Americans, Britain launched its own investigation on May 2, 1912, in London's Scottish Drill Hall. It was led by Lord Mersey, a barrister with impressive mustaches and even more impressive impatience. The inquiry lasted 36 days and heard over 100 witnesses, including shipbuilders, survivors, crew, and officials. It was far more technical than the American one, diving into the ship's construction, maritime rules, and lifeboat logistics. The same grim truths surfaced. Too few boats, ignored warnings, outdated rules, excessive speed in icy conditions. But unlike the US inquiry, the British one bent over backward to protect its own. White Star is innocent, they declared. The crew was brave. Captain Smith was praised despite leading the ship straight into an ice field. Bruce Ismay was guilty of no wrongdoing, just of surviving with his mustache and a fatal coincidence. The final verdict: the sinking was an act of God, a tragic accident. Nothing criminal. The public sighed, rolled their eyes, and ordered another cup of tea. What changed? Despite the disappointing leniency of both inquiries, they did spark real change. International ice patrols began monitoring and controlling North Atlantic areas with high iceberg concentrations. Lifeboats for all. Maritime laws were updated so every ship had to carry enough boats for everyone on board. Round-the-clock radio watch. Ships were required to keep operators on duty 24 hours a day. Drills and training became mandatory, and crew preparedness worldwide improved. Titanic sank, but her loss changed the sea forever. For the survivors, the hearings were a mix of catharsis and torment. Sitting in the hall reliving the screams in the darkness, the groans of the ship beneath their feet, listening to cold voices argue about tonnage and speed while remembering the faces left in the water. It was unbearable. Some never spoke publicly again. Others, like Lightoller, spent their lives defending the crew and captain. Some, like Ismay, faded into the shadows, haunted, shamed, half erased. And the rest of the world listened, judged, and promised to remember. Titanic's legacy was carved not only in steel. It was written in ink in the testimonies, in the trembling voices of eyewitnesses who looked senators in the eye and said, "This happened, and it must never happen again." The ship sank, but her story was only beginning to rise from the depths. Discovery and artifacts. She vanished into blackness at dawn on April 15, 1912, swallowed by the Atlantic like a whispered secret. For over 70 years she lay lost under 2 miles of salty water and time. Her exact resting place was unknown, a myth, a mystery, a memory half buried in mud. Some swore she broke in two, others insisted she sank intact. Some called her cursed, others holy. But everyone agreed, Titanic was gone, until finally she was found. The obsession begins. Almost immediately after the disaster, ideas for raising her appeared. Someone wanted to lift her with electromagnets. Others imagined filling her hull with ping-pong balls or petroleum jelly. Yes, really? But technology lagged behind imagination, and Titanic remained unreachable, a legend sleeping in darkness at 12,500 feet below the waves. For decades, the only connection the world had to her were the stories of survivors and a handful of artifacts that drifted away with the lifeboats. Life jackets, menus, teacups, a pocket watch stopped at 2:20 a.m. But we wanted more. We wanted to see her. In the 1970s, the obsession sharpened. Oceanographers, scientists, adventurers, and romantic madmen seriously began the search. Among them was a quiet, fiercely determined American named Robert Ballard, who would one day change history. Ballard had been trying to find Titanic for years. He knew it was possible. All it needed was cutting-edge equipment, precise calculations, and a healthy dose of obsession. In 1985, he got his chance. Working with a French team led by Jean-Louis Michel, Ballard gained access to new Argo technology, an unmanned submersible with cameras capable of scanning the ocean floor. His real goal was strictly secret. Under contract with the U.S. Navy, he was supposed to find 2 sunken nuclear submarines, but he struck a deal: complete the Navy's mission and get funding for the Titanic search. They started where calculations suggested, near the last known distress coordinates, factoring in ocean currents. It was exhausting work. They searched for days. Nothing. Just endless seafloor. Then on September 1, 1985, a shape appeared on the monitor. A boiler. Then the hull. Then the bow. It was real. Titanic had been found. She lay broken in two. Her after section was separated by nearly 2,000 feet. Debris trailed across the bottom like a trail of crumbs. Porcelain, boots, wine bottles, beds, dolls, doorknobs. Time had stopped. A story once thought lost now lay open under a thin veil of silt and rust. The world froze. Ballard's team kept the discovery secret for a few days to confirm it. Then the news exploded. Titanic found. Photos were published. The ghostly elegance of the bow still majestic, buried on the seafloor. Railings, anchor chain, crow's nest, empty davits where boats once hung. It wasn't just wreckage, it was a time capsule. Ballard described an overwhelming feeling of sadness. He had found her, but not to exploit her. He believed the site should remain sacred, untouched, a maritime graveyard. "We came to mourn," he said, "not to disturb." But not everyone agreed. In the following years, the wreck became a battlefield between preservation and exploration, memory and money. In 1987, the company RMS Titanic Incorporated obtained legal rights to salvage artifacts. Using submersibles, they began bringing things to the surface. The first dive yielded over 1,800 items, from fine china to pairs of eyeglasses. Over the decades since, more than 5,000 artifacts have been recovered, each a whisper from the depths. Perfume bottles whose scents still lingered, a violin case deformed by water but recognizably elegant, a fragment of hull jagged and rusted, personal letters with faded ink and curled paper but readable text. Shoes laid out exactly as they fell, leather preserved in the icy mud. They even found bathtubs, white enamel turned ghostly gray. Cabin plaques with numbers. Pocket watches frozen at the exact moment their owners touched the water. Every artifact carried a story. And every story reminded the world, this is more than metal. This is memory. Titanic is not immune to time. 4 years bacteria, including a recently discovered strain of Halomonas titanici, have slowly been eating the iron of the wreck, forming stalactite-like rustic glass. They hang from railings, cover decks, cling to beams like fragile underwater icicles. They are strangely beautiful, but they mean decay. Experts believe the ship will completely disintegrate within the coming decades. Some parts have already vanished. The crow's nest is gone. Cabin walls have collapsed. The captain's bathtub, once visible, has turned to dust. Time is slowly but relentlessly taking her. Not everyone agrees how the wreck should be treated. Some see Titanic as a museum, a place of learning and connection. Others as a grave that should be left in peace. Many families of victims have begged that nothing more be raised. For them it is a shrine, untouchable, sleeping. Others believe recovering objects preserves memory and that a fork or a shoe can say more than any book. In 2012, the wreck site received UNESCO protection as a cultural heritage site. Since then, any expeditions must be conducted with great care and oversight. But the debate continues. Today, artifacts from Titanic are displayed in museums around the world, from Las Vegas to Belfast, from Paris to Nova Scotia. Visitors walk past her china, her deck chairs, her clothing, her letters. Some museums recreate the ship's corridors or chill the air to the temperature of that fatal night. Others recreate the last menu or let you touch a real replica of an iceberg. And standing before these relics, people cry, because it feels like reaching into the past, because suddenly you see not a ship but lives, because the salt preserved not only metal but memory. Titanic rests quietly 2.5 miles beneath the ocean surface. She is crumbling, disappearing, yet she is still there. Recent years of sonar scans have revealed striking details. Chandeliers that fell exactly where they dropped, engine rooms collapsed, the stern a chaotic labyrinth of steel. Remote vehicles glide through her ghostly halls, sending back images like dreams. It is darker than night down there. Light never reaches. Noise never disturbs. Only currents, only rust, only memory. And she remains one of the most visited places on Earth that no human has set foot on since 1912. Titanic was lost for 73 years, found almost 40 years ago. Yet her hold on us is as strong as ever. Every raised artifact is like a letter from the past. Every expedition is both a funeral and a miracle. Every glance beneath the waves is a reminder of human ambition, of fragility, of how quickly glory becomes a ghost. She is not just a shipwreck, she is a museum, a monument, a myth sleeping in the quiet depths. And we are still listening. Tourism. Titanic may have disappeared beneath the waves in 1912, but she never truly vanished. On the contrary, like a ghost too glamorous to fade, she stayed. First in stories, then in movies, and later in tourism. The wreck turned into a destination, a memory, an industry. And now, more than a century later, you can walk her corridors, drink her tea, even lie in her beds, without ever getting wet. Welcome, dear dreamer, to Titanic tourism. Even before the wreck was found, Titanic began attracting visitors not to the ocean floor but to the hearts of cities connected to her. In Southampton, where her maiden voyage began, people came to the docks, some with flowers, some with cameras. The Southampton Maritime Museum, later expanded into Sea City, became a center of remembrance. It holds maps, models, and heart-wrenching stories of a city that lost over 500 crew members. In Halifax, Nova Scotia, where many bodies were brought after the disaster, Fairview Lawn Cemetery became a sacred site. Rows of modest curved headstones marked the graves of Titanic victims, including the famous one inscribed J. Dawson, not Leonardo DiCaprio unfortunately, but a real person named Joseph Dawson, a trimmer's assistant. Visitors still leave flowers, notes, quotes from the movie, because grief, like tourism, is rarely rational. In 2012, exactly 100 years after the sinking, a gleaming angular building rose over the old Harland and Wolff shipyard in Belfast. Its design, size, and shape echo the bow of Titanic. Its purpose, Titanic Belfast, a vast multi-story museum dedicated to the ship, the people, and the myth. Here you can walk reconstructed shipyards, ride a virtual attraction showing the building of Titanic, touch interactive deck plans, stand on the very slipway where she first met the water. The museum ends in silence, a dark, reflective space showing the current state of the wreck through sonar images and ghostly footage of the past. Many leave with tears in their eyes. Some say it's the closest we'll ever come to truly understanding her story. There you can even drink coffee in the drawing office, in the very room where her plans were once drafted. Yes, you can sip a latte where her rivets once existed only in imagination. But not everyone wanted to leave Titanic in the past. Some tried to recreate her. That's how themed attractions appeared in Branson, Missouri. The Titanic Museum attraction is a half-scale replica of the ship. You enter with a boarding pass assigned to a real passenger, touch a wall of ice from an iceberg, walk through first-class corridors, and at the end learn whether your assigned passenger survived. A bit traumatic for kids, deeply moving for adults. In Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, another Titanic museum offers the same, with extra funnels, staff in period uniforms, and yes, grand staircases you can descend while feeling doomed and majestic. In China, they even started building a full-size Titanic II replica meant to sail. Yes, you read that right. As of now, the project is on hold, but for a while it was very real, because someone decided, why not recreate the famously doomed ship? Of course, you can also stay overnight in a Titanic-themed hotel. The Titanic Hotel Belfast is located in the former headquarters of Harland & Wolff and blends Edwardian elegance with modern luxury. In Liverpool, you can dine in Titanic-themed restaurants. In Las Vegas, you can even get married on a fake deck to the soft strains of Celine Dion. Tragedy now comes with champagne and gift packages. Underwater visits to the actual wreck. Yes, visiting Titanic in person is possible. No, it's not cheap. Yes, it's extremely controversial. Several deep-sea tourism companies have offered dives to the wreck at 12,500 feet in submersibles. Such tours cost from $100,000 to $250,000 per person and last several days. You squeeze into a small metal sphere with scientists, a pilot, and a window into history. The experience is life-changing. You hover in silence just meters from the broken bow. You see her up close. Railings, anchor, emptiness where the grand staircase once stood. Some cry, some stay silent, some just stare, holding their breath. But these trips sparked controversy. Do we have the right to disturb a grave? Should billionaires treat a tragedy like a tourist stop? And then in 2023 the worst happened. The submersible Titan from OceanGate, carrying 5 people including the company's founder, imploded during a dive to the wreck. All perished. The incident reignited questions of safety, ethics, and the line between honoring and turning tragedy into spectacle. Yet the ocean whispers and some continue the dives. Titanic isn't just visited, she's sold. Want a Titanic necklace? Here you go. A replica deck chair? Of course. A White Star Line tea service? At your service. From models to souvenir plates, her legacy lives in gift shops and on eBay. There are board games about Titanic, escape rooms, perfumes, even Lego sets where kids can recreate the maritime disaster in cute bricks. And of course, the 1997 movie, which you probably quote every evening, triggered a massive surge in Titanic tourism. Museums reported a 300% increase in visitors. People booked cruises just to talk about Titanic. And yes, every gift shop sold Heart of the Ocean necklaces. Did you know it would come to this? So what is Titanic tourism really? A shrine, a spectacle, both? Some come to mourn, others for selfies, some leave flowers on graves, some film TikToks with sad violin music. But somewhere in the middle, the story keeps living. In museum halls, in salt-encrusted artifacts, in the echo of a name quietly spoken by strangers. Titanic has become bigger than a shipwreck. She is a symbol, a pilgrimage, a poem. Why do we keep coming back? Because we still see ourselves in her. Titanic was human genius wrapped in steel and human error wrapped in arrogance. She reminds us of what we're capable of and what we must never forget. Her passengers were dreamers, immigrants, elites, and engineers, just like us, full of stories, hopes, and contradictions. Visiting Titanic isn't just about the ship. It's about becoming part of a story that never really ended. Pop culture and film. Titanic sank only once, but she has been resurrected 1,000 times. Though her steel was swallowed by the ocean, her story rose like a ghost, both eerie and inspiring, haunting generations. She became bigger than a ship, bigger than a tragedy. Titanic turned into a symbol, a myth, a canvas. And nowhere has this shone more brightly than in popular culture, where her story still echoes from film reels, radio waves, bookshelves, and glowing screens. From early silent films to modern cinematic epics, from black and white documentaries to Broadway musicals, Titanic has settled forever in humanity's imagination. And every time her story is retold, it reflects the era that created it. New fears, new fascinations, new voices layer onto the narrative that began in icy water but still burns with human fire. The first screen version of the Titanic disaster was released just 29 days after the sinking. The film was called Saved from the Titanic, and it starred Dorothy Gibson, a real survivor who appeared on screen in the exact dress she wore when she escaped the ship. She had barely made it back to New York before playing herself again, recreating the events in front of the camera with a face still painfully fresh with memory. Silent and stark, the film was both a strange form of therapy and exploitation. Today it is tragically lost to time. No copies survive. But the fact that it existed proves how quickly Titanic's story seized the public imagination. In the following decades, the tale was retold again and again. A 1915 German film offered a more detailed silent version. Later movies romanticized or softened the tragedy. Some treated it as a metaphor for human hubris, others as a moral parable, and some simply as spectacular entertainment. But one adaptation stood out among all the pre-Cameron era films. A Night to Remember in 1958 became the embodiment of historical dignity on screen. Based on Walter Lord's book of the same name, it remains one of the most respected films about Titanic. Shot in black and white, it focused not on a fictional romance but on the disaster itself, on the crew, passengers, and decisions made in the final hours. It avoided melodrama in favor of quiet, terrible truth. Officers were shown with nuance, class divisions with sober honesty, and the ship's death not as a cinematic climax but as the slow destruction of order and certainty. This film became a cornerstone of Titanic culture. It inspired historians, taught whole generations, and made a deep impression on one young man named James Cameron. Titanic 1997, the ship reborn in color and tragedy. In the history of world cinema, few films are as iconic and emotionally devastating as Titanic from 1997. Directed, written, and obsessively brought to life by James Cameron, it reimagined the disaster film, historical melodrama, and cinematic spectacle in one breath. Cameron didn't just want to tell the story, he wanted to resurrect the ship. He poured millions into historical research and even dove to the wreck himself. Every detail, from carpet patterns to the creak of davits during lowering, was recreated with pedantic accuracy. But he didn't stop there. He needed a story big enough to carry the weight of 1,500 souls. So Jack and Rose were born. Jack Dawson, a free-spirited artist from third class, and Rose DeWitt Bukater, a reluctant aristocrat with fire in her eyes. Their doomed love from the first moment became the film's emotional backbone. Through their eyes we felt the glitter and the class barriers, the panic and the silence, the final plunge into icy darkness. The world fell in love. The film won 11 Academy Awards, including Best Picture and Best Director. It grossed over $2 billion, becoming the highest-grossing film of its time. But above all, it entered the cultural DNA of the 1990s. People stood in lines again and again. Some watched it dozens of times. People fainted, people sobbed, people bought double VHS tapes and wore out their VCRs. It wasn't just a movie, it was a global ritual of mourning. And of course, no conversation about Titanic in pop culture is complete without the song that became its emotional anthem, My Heart Will Go On, performed by Celine Dion. At first it wasn't met with enthusiasm. Cameron didn't want a pop ballad. Celine herself had doubts. But composer James Horner believed in it. When Dion recorded the demo in one take, history was decided. The song became a worldwide sensation, topped charts, won Grammys and an Oscar, and turned into a universal emotional climax for almost every heartbreak, breakup, or karaoke drama since 1997. To this day, the first notes of the flute are enough to bring entire audiences to tears. It's corny, it's grand, it's immortal. Beyond film, Titanic seeped into every corner of pop culture. In that same year of 1997, the Broadway musical Titanic opened. Against all logic, it succeeded. The focus wasn't on Jack and Rose but on real passengers and the decisions made in those fatal hours. The musical won 5 Tony Awards, including Best Musical. Audiences wept in velvet seats listening to actors sing about boilers, duty, and lost dreams. James Cameron has returned to Titanic repeatedly in documentaries, blending scientific curiosity with cinematic power. Ghosts of the Abyss, 2003, Titanic, 20 years later, 2017, and others brought viewers back to the wreck with cameras peering into forgotten cabins, sonar images showing the full scale of destruction, and reflections on legacy, loss, and what remains on the bottom. Even video games and virtual reality have tried to recreate the experience. Titanic VR lets you explore the wreck and relive the sinking in eerie detail. Fan projects like Titanic, Honor and Glory aim to rebuild the ship in stunning digital realism down to every napkin and every doorknob. People aren't done with Titanic, not even close. Titanic continues to dominate pop culture not just because of spectacle, but because of what she represents. She is the great what if. What if there had been more lifeboats? What if they had slowed down? What if the message had reached the bridge? What if Jack had survived? She is a symbol of human ambition and failure, of love that blooms in impossible conditions of class struggle and fate. She reminds us how fragile and yet how magnificent we are. And in every retelling, dramatic, romantic, or satirical, we dream again, grieve again, hope again. Titanic in pop culture isn't about repeating the tragedy, it's about refusing to forget. Reflections and legacy. When Titanic went down in the icy North Atlantic on the morning of April 15, 1912, the world changed forever. Not with an explosion, not with a siren, but with silence. A ship that symbolized the pinnacle of human innovation became, in a few hours, a haunting reminder of our fragility. She was built to shine, to endure, to dominate the sea, but nature is not impressed by marble staircases or wireless telegraphs. The disaster took more than 1,500 lives, but it also left an unforgettable mark on human consciousness. Titanic wasn't just another ship that sank. She became our collective cautionary tale, our eternal ghost, our floating Greek tragedy. And over the century her name has only gained more weight. Unlike other historical disasters, Titanic has lingered in public awareness like fog. There are many reasons. The luxury, the hubris, the unspeakable loss, the eerily perfect class divide between those who got into boats and those who didn't. There was something almost literary about the whole event. An ideal storm of innovation, ignorance, brilliance, and horror. With the arrival of the 20th century, people began to see Titanic as something more than a sunken ship. She became a symbol, a lesson, a question. Could this happen again? For the survivors, the answer stayed on their lips for the rest of their lives. Many never spoke of it again. Others told their stories so often it became part of their identity. Some married, some moved on, some never stepped on another ship again, but all of them, each in their own way, carried the night of April 14th with them forever. In the immediate aftermath, Titanic's legacy was practical. Outrage over the lack of lifeboats and preparedness led to radical changes in maritime law. In 1914, the International Convention for the Safety of Life at Sea was created, establishing rules that still apply today. Lifeboats for all, regular drills, round-the-clock radio monitoring, patrolling of icy North Atlantic waters. The lessons were carved into legislation with the same urgency and gravity as a memorial stone. In that sense, her death, tragic as it was, became the mother of reform and probably saved thousands, maybe millions, of lives in the decades that followed. Monuments were erected around the world in her honor. In Southampton, where most of the crew lived, stands a memorial to the engineers, none of whom survived. In Halifax, where many bodies were found, modest graves with names, numbers, and unspoken sorrow. In Belfast, where she was born, the museum stands as a shrine to both her brilliance and her heartbreak. Some monuments are physical, statues, plaques, replicas. Others are invisible, a line in a textbook, a mention in a poem, a tear on an old woman's cheek when she hears a familiar melody. Titanic lives in many places, not only on the ocean floor. Time has a strange way of softening even the sharpest losses. But with Titanic, the passage of time only sharpened the pain. As each survivor died, their absence felt like another curtain falling. The last living link to the tragedy, Milvina Dean, died in 2009 at age 97. She was just 9 weeks old when she was carried into a lifeboat in her mother's arms. She didn't remember the ship, but it defined her life. In her final years, she devoted herself to protecting the respectful preservation of Titanic's memory. When she passed, part of her ashes were scattered at sea where it all began. With her went the last direct breath of living memory. But the legacy did not die with her. On the contrary, it only spoke louder. Ask someone about the Lusitania or Andrea Doria or even the Empress of Ireland. Many don't know them. But say Titanic. Eyes widen, breath catches. Everyone knows. Everyone feels something. But why? Perhaps because it was her maiden voyage. Perhaps because the rich were on board. Perhaps because the story is so eerily perfect. The unsinkable ship, the iceberg, the music playing, passengers doomed by the stars. Perhaps because the class divide is still too familiar, too painful, too human. Or perhaps because deep down Titanic is a mirror. She reflects who we were at the start of the 20th century, bold, glittering, full of promise, and recklessly certain we could control everything. She shows the cracks in our confidence, the cost of carelessness, the dignity of self-sacrifice, the power of kindness in crisis. Titanic is not just a ship, she is us. Through books, plays, documentaries, and now the legendary film, Titanic continues to unfold anew. Each generation finds something of its own on her decks. Some see romance, others injustice. Some see courage, others defeat. And all of it is true. Titanic contains multitudes. Her legacy isn't one emotion. It's a symphony, a string quartet that plays until the end. A frozen clock stuck at 2:20 a.m., a pair of shoes on the ocean floor, a violin found in a dusty attic, a weeping willow, and memory. She is not merely a historical event, she is a feeling. As we close this journey, this long salty voyage under the stars, we return not to the disaster but to the dream. Because before she sank, Titanic was rising. She shone. She carried hope across the sea. She was more than the sum of her lifeboats and rivets. She was the collective heartbeat of an era that believed anything was possible. And though her story ends 12,500 feet underwater, her soul continues to sail above us. In museums, in stories, in whispers passed down through generations, in your eyes when you remember her. Titanic's legacy is not in her fall, but in her echo.